Before we start, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, can you please tell me where and what time you're watching? Thanks. The first sound I heard was the click. Not the quick metallic snap of a lock turning all the way, but the slow, careful easing of a latch, the kind of movement you make when you don't want to be heard. The apartment was dark except for the pale blue glow from the cable box on the TV stand. The numbers read 2:46 a.m. I'd fallen asleep on the couch again, one leg hanging off, the blanket twisted on the floor, the TV on mute throwing silent light over the coffee table. I lay there, breath held, ears straining. I could hear the refrigerator humming, the distant rush of a car on the highway. And then, movement. Not outside, inside. A shadow slipping under the crack of my bedroom door, cutting the dim light from the street lamp outside into pieces. My heart thudded so hard I could feel it in my jaw. Every nerve fired at once. I slid my hand toward the pepper spray I kept under the coffee table, fingers shaking. I told people I carried it for walking to my car after work. That wasn't the truth. The truth was, I'd been expecting him. And I guess to understand that, you need to know how he got here. Springdale, Arkansas is the kind of place where life runs in slow motion. People still wave from their porches. You run into the same folks at the grocery store every week, drive 10 minutes in any direction, and you're in farmland. I grew up here thinking danger was something that happened in cities, in dark alleys, in other people's lives. Before all this, I was a dental assistant at a small clinic off Highway 412. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid the rent, covered my car payment on my second-hand Nissan, and kept my student loans just above water. Then March 2020 came, and the pandemic hit like a slow-motion wreck. First, the patients stopped coming in, then hours got cut, then the clinic shut down. I had 2 weeks before rent was due and my checking account was down to double digits. I remember sitting on my couch one night, eating peanut butter straight from the jar, scrolling job listings that paid worse than my high school summer job. My phone buzzed. FaceTime from Maria, one of the hygienists from work. She had a glass of wine the size of her head and a grin to match. "Girl, you could make a killing on OnlyFans. You're cute, you've got tattoos, and guys are desperate as hell right now." I laughed. "That's not me." "Money doesn't care if it's you," she said. "Don't show your face, pick a fake name. Easy." I brushed it off, but later that night, staring at the water stain on my ceiling, I thought about my car rattling every time I turned left, the loans breathing down my neck, the bills still coming while the world was on pause. I made a profile. No face, no real name. I called myself Nova Blaze, dyed my hair a red I'd never wear in real life, leaned on filters so heavy I barely looked like me. The first week was slow, a few messages, small tips. Then it picked up. Feet pics, lingerie shots, suggestive but not explicit. I told myself it was temporary. Temporary has a way of stretching when you're making more in a month than you ever made in 3 at a real job. By month 3, I'd moved to a slightly nicer apartment, paid off the Nissan, even bought my younger brother Eli a laptop for school. I'd also learned the audience. Sweet fans, needy ones, aggressive ones, and the ones that made your skin crawl. That's when Johnny Fire 88 showed up. At first, he seemed like the kind of subscriber you wanted. He tipped $50 just to say good morning, asked my favorite candy, told me his dad had died of COVID and he just needed someone to talk to. I felt sorry for him. I wrote back more than I should have. Once I even sent him a voice note. He thanked me like I'd saved his life. Then the tone shifted. "You looked sad today. Who were you with last night? Do you really like those other guys more than me?" I never told him my real name, never showed my face in public posts. But one night he mentioned Eli, said he hoped my brother was doing well in school. A week later, he sent a photo of a car that looked exactly like my Nissan, parked outside the gym I went to twice a week. I blocked him immediately. By morning, there were 5 new accounts, All some variation of John. I changed my username, hair color, even got a new phone number. I stopped going to the gym for a while, ordered groceries online. I moved into a gated complex where you needed a code to get into the parking lot. 2 weeks later, I came home in the rain, arms full of paper bags, and saw the keypad by the gate blinking red. Recently used. Probably a delivery, the leasing manager said the next day. DoorDash guys get in without buzzing tenants sometimes. I wanted to believe that. Then, 3 days later, someone slid a note under my apartment door. You moved again. You're really making me work for it. I stopped sleeping. Triple locked the door. Kept pepper spray in my pocket even at home. I signed up for therapy. Stalking is about control, Angela, my therapist, told me. When they realize they can't control your attention, they escalate. I didn't want to believe her. I should have. A month later, Eli called. His girlfriend had kicked him out. Could he crash for a week? I didn't tell him anything. No need to make him worry. We ordered pizza that night, watched bad action movies, argued about pineapple on pizza. For a few hours, it felt like the shadow hanging over me had lifted. At 3:17 a.m., I woke up to the sound of the balcony glass shifting. I turned my head. A man stood outside my third-floor balcony door. His hand pressed to the glass, pale, trembling. I screamed. Eli came running, but by the time the lights were on, the man was gone. The cops checked the lock, found nothing. Probably a drunk neighbor, one said. On the third floor? I asked. No answer. The next day I bought blackout curtains and a second lock for the balcony door. That night I deactivated my OnlyFans. Everything I'd built under Nova Blaze, gone. A week passed. No notes, no shadows. Then one night after work I came home to find my apartment door unlocked. Just enough that it didn't latch. Eli? I called. Nothing. Everything looked untouched. The TV was there, my laptop. But on the kitchen table was a single red envelope. Inside, a Polaroid. Me, asleep. Taken through my bedroom window. I dropped to my knees, phone shaking in my hand as I called Eli. He stayed on the line until the cops came. They found no prints, no camera footage. Could be a prank, they said. I knew better. 2 nights later, Eli was out. I took a long shower, steam curling around me. I was brushing my hair in the bathroom mirror when I heard it. The click, followed by weight shifting outside my bedroom door. I froze, dropped the brush, ran to the bathroom, locked the door. No cell signal. Then his voice. Naomi. I'd never told him my real name. You said you'd never leave me. The pounding started, measured, deliberate. I grabbed the heavy ceramic toilet tank lid. My arms shook, then silence. I opened the door an inch. He was there, tall, gaunt, messy hair, eyes wide and unblinking, knife in one hand, phone in the other, a photo of me smiling, my OnlyFans profile at the top. Why'd you leave me? He whispered. I gave you everything. I slammed the door. I don't remember crossing the apartment, only Eli's voice yelling my name and the sound of a struggle. When I came to, Eli had him pinned to the floor, the knife across the room. The cops arrived. The man was unconscious, overdosed before breaking in. His name was Jonathan Lee Simmons, 34, from Tampa. No record, no diagnosis. Lived with his mother. Worked at a shipping warehouse. Drove 16 hours to find me. Paid a hacker to get my billing info. That's how he learned my real name. The trial was short. The judge called it attempted murder. I call it something else. I changed my hair, my number, my name. I moved. I don't post online anymore. People still ask why I don't go back. You were making bank. They don't know what it's like to wake up at 3:17 a.m. Sure, there's someone behind the glass. They don't know what it's like to hear your real name whispered in the dark. So tell me, if the thing that saved you once became the thing that nearly killed you, could you ever go back? My name is Claire Monroe, and I turned 21 a month ago. For years, I'd imagined this age as the point where life would fall neatly into place, where I'd be independent, self-assured, and finally steering my own course. I'd pictured myself waking up in some sunny apartment, drinking coffee from a chipped mug while flipping through textbooks, my future unfolding with the same crisp certainty as the pages. Reality was nothing like that. The apartment I moved into was a cramped one-bedroom with thin walls and a faint, permanent smell of damp plaster. My neighbor upstairs liked to play bass-heavy music at 2 a.m, and the radiator clanked like it had a personal grudge. Rent was due before I'd even memorized the bus schedule to campus. I worked a short-lived stint at McDonald's, balancing trays and fake smiles, until the stress of juggling shifts and coursework nearly crushed me. Every day felt like running a race I hadn't trained for, my savings dwindling, my studies slipping out of focus. I was desperate. It was during one of those late nights scrolling aimlessly through Instagram, my mind half numb from exhaustion, that I got a message from someone I didn't know. "Do you sell content?" That was all it said. No hello, no small talk. Just that. I stared at the words, a little startled. My first instinct was to say no, and I did, adding a polite but firm explanation. It wasn't something I'd ever considered. I'd always been shy in ways that didn't show until someone suggested I step outside my comfort zone. But before I could move on, the person replied, "You should think about it, you're beautiful. You'd do well." It was the kind of compliment I should have brushed off, but my mind caught on the phrase, "do well." I typed back something non-committal, but my curiosity was already tugging. I asked how it worked. The account had no posts. The profile picture was a strange cartoon, one I recognized vaguely from my childhood, something my brother and I used to watch on old DVDs. That flicker of recognition made me uneasy, but I pushed it aside. He explained everything, how OnlyFans worked, how to set prices, how to grow an audience. He even offered to be my first subscriber if I joined. I still didn't trust him, but I couldn't ignore the reality pressing in on me. The rent, the tuition, the gnawing sense that I was running out of options. Before deciding, I reached out to 2 friends who were already on the platform. They were blunt, but encouraging. "If you're smart about it, it's quick money," one said. "Block the creeps. Keep control. You'll be fine." A week later, I was sitting cross-legged on my bedroom floor, my laptop glowing in the dark, the air smelling faintly of laundry detergent and the cheap vanilla candle I'd bought for ambiance. I'd spent the day taking pictures, nothing extreme at first, and when I finally hit publish, I felt both reckless and liberated. The next morning, I woke to 25 unread messages. Most were from strangers whose usernames meant nothing to me, but there was one from him, the guy who'd started all this. "You finally did it. I'm proud of you." I wasn't sure why that line felt so personal, or why over the next few weeks we kept talking. At first he was just another subscriber. Then he became someone I looked forward to hearing from, someone who shared my sense of humor, who'd stay up late talking about movies, who somehow knew just the right things to say to make me feel seen. I kept my boundaries, but I didn't deny the small rush I felt when his name popped up on my screen. The money came steadily, and for the first time since moving out, I could breathe. I could study without worrying if I'd have to skip a meal. I could even save a little. But nothing stays simple. When winter break rolled around, I decided to visit my parents. It had been years and I missed them, even if the visits were always laced with the quiet tension of how different I'd become. I didn't tell them what I was doing for work. Instead, I resurrected the story that I'd been working occasional shifts at McDonald's. The day passed in a blur of small talk, familiar smells from my mom's kitchen, and the creak of the old house settling. By late afternoon, I realized my younger brother Ryan wasn't home. 16 now, taller than I remembered, but still the kid who used to trail me everywhere when we were little. I thought it would be fun to surprise him, so I went to wait in his room. It was exactly as I remembered, messy, cluttered, the faint scent of cologne mixing with old paper and dust. His computer screen was lit. A tab was open. I shouldn't have looked. But I did. The shock was instant, like cold water dumped down my back. On the screen were images I knew too well, images of me. Not the safe public photos, the private ones. My hands went cold. Another tab was open, and when I clicked it, I saw something that made my stomach turn. A message thread. My name wasn't in it, but I recognized the words, the style. I recognized him, the same guy who had encouraged me to start. The room tilted. I backed away from the desk like it might burn me. When the door creaked, I turned sharply. Ryan stood there, wide-eyed, caught between guilt and some other unreadable expression. "Claire," he said quickly, "don't freak out. It's not what it looks like. A friend showed me. I didn't know it was you." But I knew that voice. I knew when he was lying. The air felt heavier with every second. My pulse roared in my ears. I told him I wasn't stupid, that he'd crossed a line no one should cross. That's when his face changed, shifting from defensiveness to something harder, sharper. His voice lowered. "If you tell anyone, I'll tell everyone what you've been doing. You think Mom and Dad would still want you around?" For a second, I couldn't move. What happened after unraveled so quickly it still feels like a blur. Voices raised, words flung like knives, the kind of argument that strips away any illusion of family warmth. His bravado crumbled just as suddenly, replaced by a desperate edge I didn't recognize. And then, he was gone. Out the window. The sound when he hit the ground will never leave me. The rest of that day moved in fragments. The neighbors' shouts, my parents' horrified faces, the flashing lights of the ambulance, the police questions, the way their eyes shifted when they learned he'd jumped. They called it suicide. When I told my parents the truth about my job, it didn't matter that it had nothing to do with what happened. Their anger was absolute. They told me to leave. I did. Now, months later, the account is still there, but it's just a hollow thing I log into sometimes out of habit. The money doesn't feel like freedom anymore. Every message feels like a thread pulling me back to that day, to the window, to the sound. And sometimes I wonder, was there a moment where I could have said something, done something differently, and changed everything? What do you think? Is there ever truly a point where we could have stopped someone from stepping over the edge? The first time I saw Lila, I was sitting cross-legged on my bed, surrounded by the half-unpacked mess of my own life. When the door swung open, and a burst of warm September air followed her inside. She wasn't dragging her suitcase so much as letting it roll behind her like it belonged to her, plastered in faded travel stickers from cities I'd only ever seen in photographs. She had the kind of smile that made you think she'd already read the room and decided she was going to own it. She didn't ask if the other bed was taken. She tossed her duffel onto it, pulled a hair tie from her wrist, and swept her long, honey-brown hair up into a messy bun. Her perfume drifted across the space, coconut lotion mixed with something sharper, a scent I'd come to know almost as well as my own. We weren't instant best friends. The first few days were polite exchanges, sharing outlets and avoiding stepping on each other's laundry piles. But then came the night she leaned over my desk, pointed at the open textbook and said, "If we're going to live together, you're going to have to loosen up. Let's get pizza." From that night on, the invisible line between roommate and family faded. Lila wasn't just a friend. She was the kind of person you told things to without realizing you were confessing. She had a way of making me laugh when I didn't want to, of pulling me into her orbit until it felt strange to imagine a day without her in it. By October, we'd accidentally built a reputation on campus. People called us the Party Queens, which sounded ridiculous to me, but made Lila grin like it was a title she'd been working toward her whole life. Her boyfriend Edmund was a third year with money to burn and a country house big enough to get lost in. That place became our weekend kingdom. Music shaking the walls, the chlorine-stung air from the pool mixing with the smell of cheap beer, bodies dancing in dim light. We'd swim in our clothes, sing until our voices went hoarse, and fall asleep on couches in rooms we'd never been in before. Lila was wild, but there was a steadiness to the way she cared about the people she loved. That's what made what came later so hard to believe. It was a rainy Thursday when I learned something new about her. We'd decided to skip our afternoon classes, the storm hammering at the windows as we curled up in the room. I was scrolling through videos on my phone, half listening to the sound of the shower running in the bathroom. When the door opened, Lila stepped out wearing lace and a garter belt, water still dripping from her hair. "Whoa," I said, sitting up. "Where's Miss Dressed to Kill going in this weather?" She laughed, brushing her hair back. "Don't be an idiot, Bella. I'm not going anywhere. Just taking some pictures for my OnlyFans." I blinked. "You have an OnlyFans?" "Of course. How do you think I pay for all this?" She gestured to the row of makeup palettes and overflowing shopping bags by her bed. "I don't know. Your parents? Edmund? You've never had a job." "Exactly." She winked. I wasn't judging her. Not really. But a recent news story flashed through my mind about a woman in another city who'd been recognized from the platform, stalked, and murdered. "You're not worried about creeps?" I asked. "I never show my face," she said. "Nobody's here for that anyway." Her tone was casual, but the thought lodged in my gut like a stone. From then on, I noticed her taking more time with her photos, setting up lights, ordering new outfits, locking the door while she worked. She never told Edmund about it and made me promise not to either. I agreed, partly because I understood it wasn't my business, and partly because I didn't want to risk the bond we had. A few days later, we were at the campus gym when a voice came from behind us. "Do you two come here often?" I turned, smiling automatically. "Hi, Mrs. Codrington." The campus librarian didn't even look at me. Her gaze was fixed entirely on Lila. "You have an amazing body, honey. You don't even need to train that much." Lila laughed lightly. "Thanks, that's sweet." "And that mermaid tattoo on your waist," Mrs. Codrington added, tilting her head. "Is that new?" "Yep." "You like it?" Lila asked. The older woman smiled a little too long before saying, "You're pretty, but you've got to be attractive if you want to be noticed." Learn from Lila. I forced a polite smile, but my stomach knotted. Lila caught my look and shook her head, silently telling me not to make a big deal of it. That night was one of Edmund's parties, the kind where you could hear the bass from the driveway. As soon as we walked in, Lila made a beeline for the drinks table, ignoring my half-hearted attempt to get her to pace herself. I gave up and joined friends on the dance floor. A while later, her phone buzzed in my bag. I glanced down. An unknown number. I tried waving her over, but the music drowned me out, so I walked to the pool where she was laughing with Edmund. When she saw the number, her smile froze. She took the phone and stepped outside. I didn't see her again that night. The next morning, Edmund's voice jolted me awake. "Where the hell is she? No one's seen her since last night." My heart slammed in my chest. "What do you mean?" "She went outside to take a call. She never came back." His voice cracked, panic bleeding through. That was the last time I ever saw Lila. The police came. They asked questions. I told them about the phone call, about her OnlyFans. Rumors exploded across campus. Maybe a stalker from the site had taken her. Maybe she was off partying somewhere. But my gut told me something worse had happened. 4 days later, they found security footage from near Edmund's house. Lila, standing on the sidewalk looking around, a van pulling up, her walking to the driver's window, no hesitation, and getting in. The van belonged to Mrs. Codrington. The police arrested her that morning. In her basement, they found 2 bodies, her husband and Lila. It turned out her husband had been having an affair with Lila for months. She discovered it by looking through his phone and found not just messages but photos and videos from Lila's OnlyFans. Some of them were of the 2 of them together. She'd kidnapped him first, then lured Lila with that phone call. She said in her confession that when she saw Lila's mermaid tattoo at the gym, she knew instantly she was the girl from the photos. She described shooting her husband until the gun was empty, and making him look at the pictures before he died. I sat through that trial like I was somewhere else entirely. Even now, I sometimes hear Lila's laugh in my head. I still wonder, if I'd pushed harder, if I'd told someone sooner, would she still be here? And I have to ask, when someone you love is hiding something dangerous, how far would you go to stop them? The first time I realized my twin sister's life could actually be dangerous was the morning she yanked me out of bed with that wild grin of hers, the one that always meant trouble. "Up," Yania ordered, throwing a pillow at my face. "I've got the perfect idea." I groaned, trying to burrow deeper under the blanket. "It's not even 7. What's wrong with you?" She ignored me, grabbing my wrist with her perfectly manicured nails and tugging me toward the bathroom. Her hands were warm, insistent, the way they always were when she was too excited to take no for an answer. "Stop, Yania." I half laughed, half protested, stumbling after her. She halted only long enough to give me a theatrical sigh, the kind that told me I'd already lost. That day had started like so many before it. I was the quieter twin, the one who read psychology journals for fun, who could get lost in a train of thought so deep I'd forget where I was. Yenia was all impulse and spectacle, a walking storm with an eye for fashion trends and a knack for pulling me into whatever whirlpool she was spinning. We looked so alike it sometimes unsettled me. Same honey-brown hair, same green eyes, same small scar above the lip from when we fell off our bikes at 8. But inside, we were mirror opposites. Her latest idea was something she'd pitched before but never pulled off. A twin exchange. She framed it as an experiment to see if we could live each other's lives for a week. I'd laughed it off the first dozen times she mentioned it. The last time we'd tried something similar was in 3rd grade, and it had ended in tears, detention, and my favorite sweater ruined with grape juice. But that morning she was relentless. She cornered me in the bathroom with her makeup spread out like surgical tools, eyes glinting with mischief. "This time it'll be fun," she insisted. "You get to walk in my shoes, meet my friends, wear the clothes. I'll dive into your nerdy little psychology classes, read about human behavior, whatever. We'll swap for a week, and don't even try saying no, because I already laid out your outfit." Her outfit was a black skirt barely brushing mid-thigh, a fitted top that dipped lower than I was comfortable with, and a leather jacket that smelled faintly of her favorite vanilla perfume. I stared at it like it was a dare. "You're kidding me," she smirked. "You'll look stunning. Trust me." An hour later, I stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing myself. The girl staring back wasn't the one who blended into lecture halls unnoticed, who pulled her hair back into a messy bun and carried a canvas tote full of books. She looked confident, loud, someone who could command attention without even trying. Yenia clapped her hands, satisfied. "Perfect. Now remember, your name is me, my friends are your friends, and my life is your life, until Friday night." The plan sounded manageable when she laid it out. Just go to her classes, hang out with her friends, answer to her name. But the part she brushed over was the personality swap. My comfort zone was quiet conversations in coffee shops. Her world was full of extroverts who thrived on gossip, parties, and endless selfies. Still, I agreed. It was only a week. I should have known better. The first sign that things weren't going to go smoothly came as soon as I stepped outside our building. The campus was still waking up, a cool breeze cutting through the early sunlight, scattering dried leaves along the brick paths. Near the entrance, leaning casually against a lamppost, stood a guy in a black hoodie and sunglasses. It wasn't unusual to see people hanging around, waiting for friends before class, but something about him pulled my focus. He wasn't scrolling through his phone, wasn't talking to anyone, just standing there, angled slightly toward me. I told myself I was being paranoid and walked on. Half a block later, I noticed his footsteps behind me. They weren't hurried, but they matched my pace just enough to make me aware of them. When I glanced back, he was pretending to check his phone now, head lowered, His dark hoodie looked slightly too big for him, the sleeves covering most of his hands. Maybe he was just another student headed the same way. I kept walking. By the time I reached Yenia's fashion design building, the air was thick with the scent of fabric glue and perfume, and laughter drifted from open classroom doors. I was still adjusting to how different this side of campus felt, everything louder, brighter, more curated. Sliding into a seat near the back, I took out the notebook I'd stuffed in my bag. That's when he walked in, the guy in the hoodie. No sunglasses now, but the same sharp jawline, the same unreadable eyes. He scanned the room, spotted me instantly, and walked over. "Hey," he said, dropping into the chair beside mine. I gave him a polite nod and turned back toward the front, my heart picking up a little. "What's your major?" he asked after a beat. It hit me like a slap. I didn't have Yenia's textbooks. In my rush, I'd grabbed my own psychology notes. I'm just into psychology," I said, forcing a casual shrug. His mouth curved, not quite into a smile. "Aren't you that model from that site?" I blinked. "What site?" He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I know it's you. You can pretend all you want, but I've seen your photos. I like that you're into fashion, though." Something in his tone made my stomach twist. Then he said it. Soft enough that only I could hear, but clear enough to land like ice water. "Ignore me, and I'll make your life hell." I stared at him, caught between disbelief and fear. A second later, he stood, slung his bag over his shoulder, and walked out. I sat frozen through the rest of the lecture, his words playing over and over in my head. When class finally ended, I was halfway out the door when a sudden grip yanked the back of my shirt. I spun around. It was him again, his hand now clamped around my arm. His expression was unreadable, but his laughter was low, mocking. My pulse thundered in my ears. Then he let go, almost gently, and walked away as if nothing had happened. I didn't remember the walk back to our room. My thoughts were all over the place. Who was he? What did he mean? And what in hell had my sister gotten herself into? When I opened the door, I found Yenia curled up in bed, face pressed into her pillow. Her eyes were swollen. "Hey," she said, trying to force a smile. "How was your day?" "Why are you crying?" I asked quietly. The smile collapsed. She sat up, and the tears came again. And then she told me everything. About the account on an adult site, about the friends who'd pressured her, about the threats that had started not long after. It all clicked. The guy wasn't after me. He was after her. I told her we needed to report him. She hesitated, afraid, but I kept pushing until she finally agreed. We never made it to campus security. Minutes later, her phone rang. A classmate's voice was shaking on the other end. "Did you hear what happened?" "What?" Yenia asked. "There's been a murder. A guy on campus, throat slit, in the courtyard." When we heard his name, we just stared at each other. It was him. No one ever found out who did it or why. But I'd be lying if I said part of me didn't feel relief. And even now I still wonder, when justice comes in the form of something darker, is it still justice? I never imagined I'd spend my 20s in an apartment that smelled faintly of mildew no matter how much bleach I poured into the drains. The place on Kessler Avenue wasn't a dump by city standards. 2 small bedrooms, 1 cramped bath, a living room barely big enough for a couch and thrifted coffee table. But it had quirks you couldn't fix. Pipes that rattled like they had something to say. Floorboards that groaned in protest with every step. A window in my bedroom that never quite shut, letting in the scent of the alley and the occasional scream of a siren at 2 in the morning. I shared the place with Kendra, who had a talent for turning our cramped quarters into something almost warm. She was color in human form, dyeing her hair every few months, wearing vintage jackets with patches and pins, burning candles that filled the space with sandalwood and citrus. She worked part-time at a vintage clothing shop, part-time on art commissions and full-time on being loud, bright, and alive in a way I wasn't. By day, I worked the front desk at a private medical clinic in Midtown. It was all frosted glass doors and whisper-quiet hallways, a place that took its professionalism seriously. No visible tattoos, no casual talk with patients, phones banned at the desk. I spent my days scheduling appointments, dealing with insurance, and smiling in a way that was polite but empty. It paid enough to cover rent and groceries, but my student loans loomed like a storm I couldn't outrun. I used to think of my life as simple, even if it was exhausting. That was before I created Lena Vale. The idea came on one of those nights when the heat in the apartment made sleep impossible. I was scrolling through forums about making extra money when I stumbled into a thread about OnlyFans. People talked about it like an art, how they controlled lighting, poses, the exact image they presented. They weren't just posting pictures, they were managing a brand. I wasn't naive. I knew what sold. But I also knew I had something distinctive. My tattoos. A winding black and gray snake curling around my upper arm, floral line work from wrist to elbow, and a trail of moon phases just below. They gave me character, or so strangers said. In my head, I told myself no one local would ever connect them to me. I made rules before I even made the account. No face, no personal details, no identifiable background. A new name, one I could wear like armor. Lena Vale came from a character in an old paperback Kendra left on the coffee table. It had weight to it, mysterious but approachable, confident but not flashy. The kind of name you'd remember without knowing why. At first I used my phone, propping it on a cheap tripod I ordered online. Soft lamplight, close angles, enough skin to keep people interested without giving away too much. I learned my best times to post, how to craft captions that were playful without crossing my own lines. Slowly, the subscribers trickled in. By the end of the first month, I'd made rent. By the third, I'd paid off my credit card and bought a new mattress that didn't sag in the middle. For a while, it felt safe. No one at the clinic knew. My family didn't know. Even Kendra had no idea. Though she did notice the sudden uptick in groceries and the occasional Uber splurge. I told her I was doing online consulting. Not technically a lie if you stretched the truth enough. It worked. Until the night on the train. It was close to midnight, and I'd stayed late at the clinic covering for someone else. The subway car smelled faintly metallic, with that undertone of paper and dust unique to underground air. I took a corner seat, earbuds in but no music playing, a habit I'd picked up so I could avoid small talk and still hear everything. A man in a black hoodie sat diagonally across from me. He wasn't staring exactly, just glancing every so often like he was measuring something. We were 2 stops from mine when he stood. As he passed, he leaned close enough for his voice to slip under the drone of the train. "Happy birthday, Lena." It wasn't my birthday, but it had been a few days ago. I'd posted a birthday-themed set, candles, cake, playful captions, without giving the date. My chest tightened. Before I could react, he was gone, swallowed by the platform as the doors closed. The rest of the ride felt colder. My reflection in the window looked unfamiliar, like someone else entirely. I told myself he guessed. I told myself maybe I misheard. But deep down, I knew better. Life carried on. I didn't tell Kendra. I didn't change my routine. I wanted to believe it was a fluke. The second time, there was no pretending. It was a Sunday afternoon. The kind of crisp autumn day that makes you forget the city's uglier edges. Kendra and I wandered the farmer's market with iced matchas in hand, weaving between stalls of fresh bread, local honey, and overpriced handmade candles. She was chatting about a guy from her shop when I heard the squeal of bike brakes behind us. A man skidded to a stop a few feet away, his eyes fixed on me. "Oh my God," he blurted, breathless like he'd just seen a celebrity. Then he was gone, pedaling away so fast he nearly clipped a stroller. Kendra frowned. What the hell was that? I laughed it off. No idea. Probably thought I was someone else. But I knew. The way his gaze had flicked from my collarbone to my arm, tracing the lines of my tattoos like they were landmarks, the way recognition bloomed across his face. That night, I ordered long-sleeved cardigans and tattoo cover-up sleeves. I told myself it was fine. I wasn't famous, just unlucky. The third time, luck had nothing to do with it. It was a rare Saturday off, and I'd planned a slow morning. Shower, hair mask, a little omelet, my favorite black top with a denim jacket. I decided to take my laptop to Delmont Cafe, a cozy place with velvet curtains and strong coffee tucked behind boutique shops on East Barclay. The barista knew my order, oat milk latte, extra shot. I took a window seat, settled in, and started answering emails. At some point, I slipped off my jacket without thinking. My tattoos were in full view. I didn't notice him until his shadow lingered over my table. Early 30s, average build, brown windbreaker, beat-up sneakers. His eyes moved from my arm to my face and back again. Recognition spread across his features like a slow burn. He sat down without asking. "Hey," he said, low and sure. "I knew it was you." I kept my eyes on my screen. "You're Lena, right? Lena Vale?" "Sorry," I said flatly. "You've got the wrong person." His smile tightened. "No, I don't." I tried again. "Seriously, I don't know what you're talking about." He leaned back, scanning me with an intimacy that made my skin crawl. "Wow, you're really gonna sit there and lie? After all the money I've spent on you?" His voice sharpened. "You think I'm stupid? I know every inch of your body. I'd recognize those tattoos in the dark." Nearby tables had gone quiet. My hands trembled under the table. "You need to leave," I said. He laughed without humor. "Oh, I need to leave? You can take my tips but can't say hi in public. What am I, good enough to jerk off to but not to talk to?" I stood. He stood too. The barista was already on her way over. "Sir, you need to leave," she said firmly. He turned on her. "She's a liar. Acts like she's better than me, but she's just a whore with a camera." Gasps. Silence. "Outside, now, or I call the cops." His eyes flicked between us. Then he scoffed, muttered something, and stormed out. The moment the door shut, my knees went weak. The barista helped me sit, brought me water, told me not to blame myself. But I did, because his words stayed with me. I'd recognize those tattoos in the dark. What if we hadn't been in public? What if it was night? What if he followed me? I started wearing sleeves every day, even in 90-degree heat. I blurred tattoos in every post. My content shifted. Carefully cropped, carefully timed. Some fans noticed. They asked why. I ignored them. Then the messages started. Not on OnlyFans, I'd blocked him there, but to my alt Instagram, my email. One said, "Lying bitch." Another, "Bet you'd be nicer if it was just the two of us." I never replied. I saved them all. I reported what I could. The police shrugged. "Until he physically harms you, there's not much we can do. Stay aware." Stay aware. I stopped going to Delmont Cafe, took different routes home, changed my locks, bought pepper spray, memorized license plates on cars near my building. I thought about shutting everything down, but that felt like letting him win. So I adapted. I made Lena Vale invisible, blurred, filtered, protected. And still, some nights lying awake, I wonder how many others are out there. How many have seen the tattoos and stayed silent? How many are just waiting for the right moment? If you knew someone had been watching you for months without your knowledge, would you change your life, or just keep pretending you were still safe? I've always believed there's a point in life where your choices stop feeling like choices. You wake up one morning, look at yourself in the mirror, and realize you've been walking a path so long that you can't even remember the fork where you might have turned back. I'm not talking about the obvious stuff like addiction or crime. I mean the small, quiet compromises. The ones that slip in like water under a door until your whole floor's warped and buckling before you notice. My name's Lucas Myers. I'm 29 years old, and for most of my adult life I thought I had a decent grasp on who I was. I wasn't flashy, but I had pride in my work. I bartended at a place downtown called The Nest. Not a wild frat bar. Not a dive with sticky floors, but a low-lit cocktail lounge where we did things right. I could pour a perfect Negroni, garnish it with a twist cut so thin you could almost see through it. We had shelves of bitters in tiny glass bottles, infused syrups, ice cubes the size of fists. The regulars came for the drinks, but they stayed for the atmosphere. Warm wood, amber light, quiet jazz low enough that you could still have a conversation without shouting. I loved the rhythm of it. I knew how to read a room, when to step in and pull someone back from the edge of a bad night, when to give space. Bartending was as much about people as it was about drinks, and I was good at it. Then the pandemic hit and all that careful balance vanished in a week. We tried everything. Curbside cocktail kits, gift cards, a GoFundMe. But it wasn't enough. One afternoon, the owner, Marka, called us all into a Zoom meeting, her face pale against the dark background of her empty living room. She told us she couldn't keep paying rent. The Nest was done. I remember closing the laptop and just sitting in my apartment, staring at the ridiculous tropical leaf wallpaper I'd put up during what I thought was going to be a fun plant dad phase. I had $600 in my checking account. My credit cards were almost maxed, and the only savings I had were the spare coins rattling in a jar on my bookshelf. The worst part wasn't even my own rent. It was Charlie, my dog, a three-legged mutt with the soul of a war veteran. I'd adopted him 2 years earlier, after he'd been hit by a car and lost his back leg. I'd been in a bad place after my brother died, and Charlie had been the one thing that got me out of bed most days. I owed that dog more than I could ever put into words. I scrambled, sold my old Fender Strat on Craigslist, tried running mixology classes over Zoom, put in unemployment claims that went unanswered for weeks. My days blurred into late nights staring at the ceiling, wondering how long until I was out on the street. Then one night I was on a video call with a couple of friends, Maddie and Chris. We were drinking, trying to pretend the world wasn't on fire. Somehow the conversation veered into OnlyFans. Maddie, drunk and laughing, told me I had a scruffy lumberjack thing going on and that I could make bank if I tried. I laughed it off, but later, lying in bed, the idea wouldn't leave me. She'd mentioned there were niches, not just porn. Some guy she followed just made soft-spoken videos called people sweetheart, pretended to make coffee. Wholesome kink, she called it. The next day, curiosity got the better of me. I looked it up. I created a profile under a fake name, Noah Fields. No face in the profile picture, just a shot of my chest in tattoos and warm lighting. My bio was short, soft words, strong hands, warm company. I set the subscription price at $4.99. The first week, nothing. Then on day 5, a notification. User 9823 is now following you. The DM said, "Loving your vibe. More shirtless pics, please." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. I sent one. Nothing explicit, just me under the covers, sleepy-eyed. They tipped me $5. It was the easiest money I'd ever made. 12 subscribers by the end of the week. Enough to cover Charlie's meds and food. It didn't feel dirty, it felt neutral, like a side gig. I made good morning videos, whispered compliments, sent custom messages to people who said they were lonely. Most were women, some older, some my age. I kept it PG-13. Until I didn't. The first request that crossed a line came from someone named Want You to Say It. They offered $250 for a custom video where I insulted them. I turned it down. They came back with $400, then $8. I still said no. Then other requests started rolling in, from people who wanted to be yelled at, degraded. At first I drew hard boundaries. Then I started negotiating. No slurs, no animals, no kids. But yeah, I could be rough. It was a slippery slope. One guy paid me $1,200 for a 5-minute video where I wore construction boots and kicked a pillow he'd named after himself while shouting at him through the camera. I told myself it was harmless. The money climbed. My boundaries shifted, my rent got paid. Charlie got the good food again. I convinced myself I was in control. Until the message came that changed everything. It was from a blank account. No profile picture, no bio. The first message was simple. I saw the boot video. I've got a request. It's different. $5,000 up front. The next one came seconds later. There's a woman who works at the corner market on your block, the one with the red hair. I want you to go in there during your next video session and hand her an envelope with a note inside. Don't open the note. Don't say anything about it. Just smile, give it to her, and walk out. I stared at the screen, my mouth dry. I typed, "Why?" The reply was instant. "Don't worry, it's nothing illegal. Just part of a fantasy. Think of it like role play." I didn't answer. The next day, the offer went up to $10,000. The day after that, $20,000. And then came the final message. Noah Fields can't run forever. Or should I say Lucas Myers, 313 Olive Street. Cute dog. That was when my stomach turned to ice. I had never once connected my real identity to the account. Not anywhere. I shut everything down, deleted what I could, filed a police report. The cop scribbled in a notebook and told me to stay alert. That night, I packed a bag, grabbed Charlie, and drove to New Jersey to sleep in my mom's garage. I've been working part-time at a gas station under another name. I keep a bat by my bed. I check over my shoulder when I walk Charlie at night, and sometimes when I'm lying awake, I catch myself wondering, what would have happened if I'd delivered that envelope? What would you have done? The morning air was thick with that damp, late-spring chill that always seemed to cling to our small town of Ashwood. I remember how the sunlight barely filtered through the old maples lining my street, casting long, lazy shadows across cracked sidewalks. Everything felt muted, like the world was still waking up slow. I wasn't thinking much about anything the day Sarah told me she'd landed a new job. To be honest, it felt like one of those small announcements that passes by, the kind you nod at and then let slide because life was busy. I had finals coming up and a stack of projects to finish, so I didn't pry. Sarah had always been quiet, thoughtful, the kind of person who looked at the world differently, shy but fiercely smart. She studied computer science at the local community college, and for years she dreamed of a career that involved coding, maybe web development. She was good at it too, patient, meticulous, always tinkering with some project or another. When she told me she'd quit her job at the post office, the one that wore her down with 10-hour shifts, 6 days a week for barely minimum wage, I understood. That job was draining the life out of her. But when she said she had a new job and wouldn't have as much time for us, I was curious, but didn't ask much. I figured she was starting something in tech, maybe a small startup or freelance programming. I was wrapped up in my own world anyway, juggling exams and papers, so I didn't push. The last time I saw her before everything went dark was at our favorite cafe downtown. The place was small and cozy, the smell of roasted coffee beans thick in the air, the low murmur of people half drowned by the quiet hum of an old espresso machine. Sarah insisted on buying my coffee, even though I told her to let me. She smiled. That soft little smile she reserved for moments like this, the kind that made me feel like everything might be okay. "Just let me," she said, her eyes not quite meeting mine. That was the last real moment I had with her before everything changed. For nearly 2 weeks she disappeared. No texts, no calls, no replies. For someone who'd been my daily habit, that silence was deafening. I kept telling myself she was just busy, or maybe the new job was overwhelming. But there was a knot of worry I couldn't shake. I decided to surprise her one afternoon. I had a spare key to her apartment, something she gave me early on, a sign of trust, and I figured maybe she just needed company. The walk to her place was familiar. The smell of damp earth from the recent rain, the faint buzz of cicadas hidden in the trees, and the way the sun tried to break through thick clouds but never quite did. The neighborhood was quiet. Kids were at school. and most houses had drawn blinds. When I turned the key and pushed open the door, the place was different. The soft glow of afternoon sun wasn't enough to warm the space. What caught my eye first was the chaos. Tangled cables, camera rigs, bright LED lights set up in the middle of her living room like a small production studio. Then there was Sarah, dressed in lingerie, her makeup heavy and sharp, more suited for a nightclub than the quiet girl I thought I knew. Her eyes went wide when she saw me. Panic hit her like a wave. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, stepping back. "I was worried," I said, closing the door behind me. "It's been 2 weeks. No texts, no calls. I just wanted to see you." She swallowed hard, eyes darting around the room like she was looking for a way out. "It's not what you think," she said quickly, voice trembling. "Sarah, you told me you got a programming job," I said, trying to keep calm. "This isn't programming." Her hands shook as she fiddled with a ring on her finger. "It's complicated." "Complicated? You lied to me." Tears welled up, and she collapsed onto the couch, face in her hands. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want to drag you into this." "Then tell me what's going on." She looked up, eyes shining with raw fear. "I'm not working a normal job. It's live streaming, but it's not like OnlyFans or anything legal." My stomach twisted. "What do you mean? Explain." She took a deep breath, voice barely steady. "A few weeks ago, while looking for work, I got curious about the deep web. I thought I'd just browse a bit, like some kind of game. But I stumbled into something worse." Her laptop had started acting strange, rebooting itself, webcam turning on without her consent. Then the messages came. Photos of her family, her parents, her little brother leaving school, even pictures of me in my apartment, taken without us knowing. "They're forcing me to do live shows," she said, voice cracking. "It's called OnlyFans. It's illegal. If I don't go online, they threaten to hurt my family." I wanted to scream, to tell her it wasn't real, but the panic in her eyes was raw. "They told me I had to kill you," she confessed, "but I couldn't. And now they're coming." Before I could say anything, the lights flickered and died. Darkness swallowed the room. Sarah screamed, lunging toward her computer, frantically trying to unplug it. Shadows pressed against the windows like nightmare creatures. "We have to leave. Now." I grabbed her hand and she pulled me toward the back door. The air outside was cooler, but thick with tension. I could hear footsteps pounding on the porch, heavy and fast. "We need to get to my car," Sarah gasped. We darted down the alley behind her building, the gravel crunching underfoot. The street lamps flickered as we ran, casting eerie shadows across empty streets. I tried to keep my breath steady, but my heart pounded like a drum in my chest. "Who are they?" I asked, glancing over my shoulder. She shook her head. "I don't know. Some kind of gang? They wear animal masks, like wolves or bears. It's sick." As we reached the parking lot, a black van screeched to a halt across the street. The side door slid open, and figures poured out, their masks catching the dim light. Sarah's grip tightened. "Get in!" she shouted, throwing open the driver's door of her rusty sedan. I dove inside, locking the doors just as the van's headlights swept over us. Tires squealed as it tore after us, but I floored the gas, the engine roaring as we sped away. For minutes, silence stretched between us, broken only by our ragged breaths and the faint hum of the radio. "What did they want from you?" I asked finally. Sarah's eyes glistened with tears. "They took my family. Said I had to do what they say or they'd hurt them. I was supposed to keep them hidden, controlled." I shook my head in disbelief. "Why didn't you tell me?" I was scared, ashamed. I didn't know how to protect you or them. She swallowed hard, voice breaking. "They told me to kill you. I couldn't." I reached across the console, squeezing her hand. "We'll fix this, I swear." But as we drove through the night, I realized the nightmare was just beginning. The next days were a blur of phone calls, police reports, and long sleepless nights. The officers were skeptical at first, Another missing persons case tangled in a web of deep web horror stories sounded like something from a thriller novel, not reality. But when the surveillance footage from the street showed the van parked outside Sarah's building the night I visited, their attitude shifted. Her family refused to speak, scared and distant. They moved away suddenly, taking her little brother and parents to a new city without warning. Sarah refused to leave, paralyzed between fear and hope. Every night her laptop would buzz with new threats, demands. The live shows continued. Sarah was trapped, the puppet of some twisted online ring with no face. I tried to help, but every step forward felt like sinking deeper into quicksand. One night the power went out in her apartment again. I remember sitting in the dark with her, the faint glow of her phone the only light. Outside, footsteps circled like predators. She clutched my arm, whispering, "They're watching. They never stop." I felt helpless. Anger boiled beneath my skin. Anger at the monsters hiding behind screens, at the world that let this happen. Then, the night they came back, wearing their animal masks, breaking through windows, dragging Sarah screaming into the dark. I tried to fight, but they overpowered me, beating me senseless before disappearing like ghosts. Lying on the floor, bloodied and broken, all I could hear was her last plea. "Take care of them. Don't come after me." The police found me hours later. No sign of Sarah. Now, every quiet night, every shadow crossing my path brings the same terrifying question. Are they still out there waiting? And if they come back, will I be ready? If you found this story unsettling, here's something to think about. How far would you go to protect someone you love when the darkness comes from places you can't see or fight? And what happens when the people you trust most become shadows themselves? I didn't plan on becoming part of this nightmare. I was just a guy with a dull day job, an average life, and an escape. Like many others, a window into the weird corners of the internet. OnlyFans was my guilty pleasure, a place I told myself was just a way to unwind, a way to watch people share parts of themselves for cash, mostly women, some men. Mostly harmless, or so I thought. My name's Frederick Mers. I'm not handsome. I'm not particularly confident or charming. But I've always been quietly curious, and that curiosity led me down a path I never should have taken. It started simple enough. I'd spend nights scrolling through accounts, subscribing to a few creators whose work caught my eye. Feet, hands, tattoos, close-ups, everyone had a niche. Some girls showed more skin than I expected. Others kept it minimal but still managed to draw paying subscribers by focusing on odd fetishes. I was just another spectator, and I spent more money than I cared to admit. One night, trying to buy another subscription, my card got declined. The shock hit me. How much had I spent? Where was all this money going? I sat back and thought, this is a gold mine. If people pay this much for photos, maybe I could do this too. But there was a problem. I wasn't attractive. Not in any way that would make people want to pay for my photos. Plus, I was shy. I didn't want to put my face online, let alone anything else. Then one afternoon, my sister Camila walked by my room. She had flawless skin, delicate hands and feet, the kind that people might pay for. And I had an idea that felt reckless and stupid, but also desperate. I decided to take photos pretending to be her, but only of her feet and hands. No face, no body. That way I wouldn't have to show myself, and if anyone noticed, the photos could be mine since we had the same skin tone. I set up the account quietly, under her name but without her knowledge. It was simple at first. Close-ups of feet, toes, nails, hands holding objects, resting on surfaces. To my surprise, it took off immediately. Subscribers paid for exclusive photos. I started earning real money. At first, it felt like a secret victory, like I'd cracked the code. Camilla never said anything, but my family started noticing I was bringing in money, buying gifts, and not asking for much. They didn't pry, and I felt guilty but justified. After all, I was helping out financially. Still, deep down, I knew this wasn't right. The early days were easy. Then the messages began. At first, they were just odd requests. Someone wanted a photo of a specific toe, or the curve of a nail. I sent them without much thought. It was business. Then one guy started messaging often, a new user who seemed harmless. I thought he was just a fan, but his messages got weirder. The requests became specific, aggressive even. One night, I got a message that chilled me. I want to eat your feet. I want to tear them off and keep them as trophies. I froze. It was a joke, right? Then he said my real name. Thanks for the photos, Frederick. My blood ran cold. How did he know my name? I never put that on the account. Panic gripped me. I shut down my laptop, heart pounding, but it wasn't over. A WhatsApp message arrived, a voice message. Do you really think you can scam me? I know everything about you. I know where you live. I'm on my way. My breath caught. I slammed windows and locked doors like a man possessed. Camilla was home, but Mom and Dad were out. I grabbed a kitchen knife and retreated to my room, terrified. Another voice message. I see you, Frederick. Getting closer. Turn off your webcam. It'll be harder to find you. That was it. He had hacked me. He was watching. Then came knocking. Camilla. Don't open it, I yelled, but it was too late. She opened the door. It wasn't him. It was her boyfriend, Edward, a tall, strong guy. I locked the door behind him and tried to steady my shaking hands. I hoped Edward could protect us. Minutes passed. No more messages. I started to relax. Then the door opened slowly. Camilla and Edward stepped in. Hey, I said weakly. Before I could finish, Edward grabbed me from behind, muffling my scream. Camilla raised her phone to his mouth and sent a voice message. I told you I was coming for you, little Frederick. My phone rang. Same voice as the stalker. Camilla smiled cruelly. Identity theft, Frederick. Not nice. Did you think your gifts would hide what you did from me? Edward tightened his grip on my arms. You think I'm bluffing about your feet? Camilla said, squeezing them. Cold metal pressed against my skin. The knife. I couldn't scream, couldn't fight. Pain seared through me with every slow cut. Blood soaked my sheets. My mind reeled. How had it come to this? I lost consciousness. When I woke, I was in my bed. Bandages wrapped my feet, but the scars would never fade. Camilla and Edward stood over me, cold and calculating. You have to understand, she said. This was necessary. You pretended to be me and used my photos without permission. I wanted to scream, to plead. Instead, I lay broken. From that day, fear became my shadow. A life where trust was a weapon and love a lie. The days blurred after that. My body healed, but every step I took was a reminder of betrayal. The physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional wounds. Camilla and Edward's smiles haunted me. They told my parents a story about a small accident, blaming me for clumsiness around some wild animals. My parents never questioned her, trusting her version blindly. And I learned to swallow my fear, to act like nothing was wrong. But inside I was breaking. I stopped going out alone. The apartment felt like a cage. Every knock, every phone buzz set my heart racing. I couldn't even look at my own feet without shuddering. One evening, while sitting in the dim light of my room, my phone buzzed. A new message. From an unknown number. Fred, you thought it was over? You're just getting started. My hands trembled. Who else knew? What else was coming? I reached out to a friend from work, someone I trusted to help me with the tech side. I wanted to find out who was behind this, how deep it went. Together we traced the stalker's digital footprints, a maze of proxies, fake accounts, dead ends. But one thing was clear. He wasn't just some obsessed fan. This was personal. Then came the late night calls. Silent. Static. I began to feel watched, not just online, but everywhere. One night I woke to the sound of footsteps outside my window. My breath caught. I pressed myself against the cold glass, peering into the dark. Nothing but shadows. Sleep became impossible. The line between paranoia and reality blurred. At work, I distracted myself, but even there I felt eyes on me. Colleagues whispered, glanced too long. Rumors? I didn't know. Camilla's presence was a knife twisting in my gut. How could someone so close become the source of such pain? I wanted to confront her, to demand answers. But the fear chained my voice. Months passed. I tried therapy, medication, but the scars, both seen and unseen, refused to fade. One afternoon, while going through old messages, I found a photo sent from the stalker. It was a screenshot of my apartment taken from a drone. The message read, "You can run, Frederick, but you can't hide." That was the breaking point. I decided to fight back. Not with knives or threats, but with truth. I collected every message, every voice clip, every evidence. I reported everything to the police. The investigation was slow, frustrating, but it gave me a sliver of hope. I also reached out to online communities, victims of stalking and identity theft. Their stories mirrored mine. Together, we shared strength. Camilla never apologized. Her silence was the loudest betrayal. I started posting cautiously about my experience. Not the explicit parts, but the warning signs, the dangers of online deception, and the cost of secrets. Slowly, the nightmares began to lose their power. But some nights when the house is quiet and the shadows stretch long, I still wonder, how well do we really know the people closest to us? And what darkness hides behind the masks we trust? What would you do if the people you trusted most became your greatest threat?